Hello guys, please forgive my ridiculous blondness. I am not a person who looks good in blonde. I do realize that, but I'm in between redying my hair and I just had a second. I want to film as many videos in the upcoming future as possible because I don't know how much work I'm gonna have. Again, I'm actually sending my CV to 2 more labs, so chances are I'm gonna be part of 4 labs very soon. I'm not gonna have a whole lot of time, so when I do have a little time to film, I want to film something for you guys to talk to just stay in touch. So forgive the blonde hair, but like I said, I have a little bit of time now. In an hour I'm going to be redying this, so the beautiful blue is going to be back instead of this shit stain. I don't even know what that is, but yes. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about horror, a little bit, horror movies to be very specific, because it's one of my passions. I have a lot of passions and hobbies. I generally just enjoy a lot of things in life, and horror movies, generally horror is one of those things. And I have a lot of, that's liable. I wanted to say that I have a lot of friends who don't like horror, but the truth is I don't have a single friend that likes horror, at least not that I am aware of anyway. And I thought that there's a lot of people out there who don't like horror, but they might want to get into horror one day, and I thought that would be nice to make this kind of guide for people starting out. Now, I'm not going to be going over horror in general because it's such a vast and wide topic that this video would have to be a few hours long for me to get through everything. But I want to put out like the most important things that would be important to you if you are just starting out and you want to, you know, start with movies that won't traumatize you, because my biggest problem with horror is that it can be extremely traumatizing if you watch something you're not psychologically ready for. And I might think, oh, I watch horror movies, I've never been scared. Well, yes, that's because you've never gone down the very deep, dark alley that some horror movies are. I haven't, thankfully, because I know what awaits me down that alley, and I'm not ready to traumatize myself. Thank you. So a quick tip, if you are starting out and you don't mind spoilers, what I always do, because I enjoy horror a lot, but there is one thing that I really dislike about horror, and generally in movies, but it's something that happens more and more often, that is sexual violence. Unfortunately, this is something that's becoming kind of a trope. The rape revenge trope in horrors is coming back, which I don't think I have to explain what rape revenge is. I think it speaks very clearly for itself. So what I always do before I watch any horror movie, yes, call me lame, I don't care, is I read the entire synopsis of the movie. If based on the synopsis there's no sexual violence in there, I go and watch it. If there is sexual violence, that is, you know, there's a lot of it, I know it's not a movie for me, and you know what, that's okay. That's the first thing you need to remember about horror. You're not lame. Just because you have your limits, triggers, whatever, you just don't want to look at something because it makes you uncomfortable, it doesn't make you lame. That's okay, you know? That's the first thing. Don't let anyone pressure you into watching something you're not ready for, because I was pressured to watch things I wasn't ready for. Granted, I was 8 years old and the horror movies that were shown to me were not extremely cruel or graphic. They weren't even very scary, but I was 8 years old, and it was too much for me and traumatized me for a long time because my 8-year-old brain just wasn't ready for that. So it's like I said, choose wisely what you want to watch, because you don't want to hurt yourself, you want to have fun, right? Horror is to have fun. So that's the first tip I would give you. Read the synopsis, and like you really don't like spoilers, then at least check, you know, if something that is a problem for you, you know, exists in this horror movie. Another thing is to know what is a problem for you. I know that my big problem is cannibals and sexual assault. If it doesn't have any of those two things, I'm genuinely really ready to go. I can watch the movie. I don't enjoy movies that are just about torture. Saw is okay because Saw actually has a very solid, good plot. It's unfortunately the John Wick of horror, so we've got like 2 hours of torture for half an hour of actually good plot. But that's okay. But there's just some movies that is just torture, and I hate that, and I don't like that. So yes, know what you are not into and just avoid those movies. So there is one thing that I want to say, because it's basically, before we get into the horror movies that I would suggest to you to watch if you want to start out with something nice and fun, I want to tell you maybe what not to watch and not to avoid. So from what I gather, sexual torture is a problem for a lot of people, not just me, and I think it's pretty logical that it's going to be a problem for a lot of people. Unfortunately, the more gruesome and the more hardcore and horror-ish horror is, so basically the more scary and everything, the more sexual torture there is in it. It's not nice. It's not nice. So avoid all the horrors that are supposed to be the scariest and the most gruesome, because if you don't like that sort of scene, no. Movies like Sailor or The 120 Days of Sodom, I think that's the title, the Serbian movie, Cannibal Holocaust, not for me. And if you're just starting out, definitely not for you. Those are just, it's a shit fest. Don't watch it. If you get into horror and love it and you decide, you know what, sexual torture is fine, yeah, go for it. But no. Also for me, Hostel, big no, thank you, bye-bye. So genuinely, when you have like the horror movie iceberg, don't go too low. First 2 tiers are fine, everything below that, no, because everything below that, all the gruesomest, most terrible movies are based on that kind of plot and that kind of trope, and it's just nasty and vomit-inducing. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't get scared a lot, and I don't really get scared by horror movies. I think that's why I enjoy them so much, because I watch them with my boyfriend, like a few, I kind of forced him, I'm sorry, I love you baby, and even he isn't that scared, but he feels very uncomfortable. I don't even feel uncomfortable during movies. However, I don't watch those kind of movies because they're nausea-inducing and they're just nasty. I don't want to watch something that's nasty. I want to enjoy what I watch. So any type of those horror movies is, like I said, especially in the beginning, don't go for that. Don't do that to yourself. And if anyone tells you to watch it, don't. Genuinely research the movie before you watch it. But now onto the more pleasant things. So the movies that I think are really cool, movies that I personally really like, and movies that I think are good if you're just starting out with horror. So we have a few different types of horror movies, horror tropes. So there are gonna be your typical slashers. Let's start off with that, which is basically I have some sort of serial killer who's running around killing people. End of story. I started my journey with Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. I really enjoyed all of those movies, but the originals, not the remakes. And one of the reasons why I would genuinely suggest the originals is because they are way less gruesome, but also, even if there is gruesome, like in Nightmare on Elm Street, there's this moment where they cut off a dude's hand and you can see like a thing sticking out, just spurting ketchup. I don't remember which part that was. I think it's the second part, but I may be wrong. Haven't watched a lot of the parts in years now. So, you know, and we live in a day and age where, you know, the SFX and everything's just super good. So when you watch a movie from the late 70s, early 80s, it's not going to scare you as much as it would. Plus the remakes, honestly, in my opinion, are just not that good, but that's my own personal opinion. Maybe you will like them. That's totally fine. But my absolute favorite slasher of all time, and everyone's gonna hate me for this, is the Chucky series, so Child's Play, which is basically about a serial killer doll. Now the first three movies are pure horror, and they're fine, but my personal favorite is the fourth, and especially the fifth part, Bride of Chucky, and my favorite, Seed of Chucky. Now everyone's gonna hate me for this, because everyone, I think, collectively agrees that Seed of Chucky is absolutely the worst movie ever made, especially in the Chucky series. However, it is my absolute favorite. You see, the thing that I really enjoy about the old slashers, especially Chucky, is that you really actually get to like the serial killer. You get to like the villain because they're hilarious, okay? They're funny, they're witty, they're intelligent, you know, there's actually something likable about them. And in Seed of Chucky, highly recommend it. Also, Jennifer Tilly is the love of my life, so, you know, there's also that. I low-key aspire to be her one day, maybe someday, I don't know, never mind. Basically, Chucky has a bride and a child, and the general idea is that the kid is against violence, so Chucky and his wife have to go on a rehab from killing people because it's an addiction like any other Chucky. I personally find that one hilarious, one of my favorite movies of all times. Highly recommend. So yeah, that's slash movies. But if you're not into gore and if you're not into people killing each other and stuff like that, you have another part of horror which I highly recommend, and that is gothic horror. I think that's how some people call it. That's a few Tim Burton movies, but mostly a lot of Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo. I'm sorry, I don't know Spanish, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's one of my favorite horror directors, and he makes absolutely beautiful horror movies, and they're also not too or overly scary. Pan's Labyrinth is a good example to me. It wasn't really a horror movie, but some people I know watched it and they thought it was scary enough, and to them it was a horror movie, but I guess that is opinions, I don't know. My favorite of his movies is Crimson Peak, which I do think counts as horror. It's a little bit more scary, yeah, there's a little bit more jump scares, but it's an absolutely beautiful, gorgeous movie. Gothic horror basically is based on Gothic novels. They're gonna be less gruesome, there's gonna be more fantasy, they're gonna be genuinely more poetic and try to be more beautiful. Crimson Peak is based on a Gothic romance. Gothic romances are basically very often tied to the story of Bluebeard, I think that's what the English name for the dude is, and this is a very similar history to Bluebeard. However, it's extremely beautiful and atmospheric, and it's like really, it's extremely beautiful. That's all I have to say about it. So from his works, I highly recommend that. From Tim Burton, I don't really recall what he made that could count as horror. I think Sleepy Hollow counts as horror, I think that's his movie, but I'm not entirely sure. I prefer Guillermo del Toro definitely over Tim Burton. Also, he's kind of a prick with what he did with American Mickey, but that's just my own opinion. So yeah, so definitely that. Pan's Labyrinth is beautiful. The Orphanage, although that may be a little bit more scary to some people, but The Orphanage is also a beautiful movie. Genuinely, highly recommend. The next thing is something that I call the new wave of horror. I don't know if that's the official name, I don't know, don't kill me. And that's basically the horror movies that we've been seeing the last 2 or 3 years coming out, maybe up to 4. I think it started with Ari Aster, I may be wrong. But it's all those directors that started taking horror and turning it into a form of art. Now they can be gruesome, they can be scary, but basically they're supposed to be a way for art to come out. They're supposed to have meaning, they're supposed to have some depth, and they don't focus so much on the gruesomeness and the shock factor, which I hate the shock factor. I hate horror movies that are just there to shock you. However, I absolutely love horror movies where the horror is used as a medium to give some meaning, to show you something, to make you think. Ari Aster is my absolutely favorite horror director, if not my favorite director in general, so I highly recommend his movies. Same with Robert Eggers, I think it's his name. So Robert, all of those movies, those are new directors, right? So with Ari Aster we have Midsommar and Hereditary, none of which in my opinion are very scary. However, my boyfriend watched Hereditary with me and he said he felt extremely unsettled throughout the entire thing, so I guess that depends really on what you like. Yes, what I can say about Ari Aster is that the majority of his movie is rather chill, a little bit creepy but chill, and in the last half an hour all hell breaks loose, and that's also where the gore happens, so you can close your eyes. Another tip, close your eyes when the gore is happening. It's okay, I'm not gonna judge you, and no one should judge you as well. That's fine. But I think Ari Aster's, like especially Hereditary, God, I am in love. There's so many layers upon layers. The camera angles are absolutely beautiful. Fun fact, I was actually for 3 years in a high school that was highly oriented towards filmography, so I do have a teeny tiny background in filmography, just a small one, but I do know a little bit, and that makes me really appreciate Ari Aster and his camera work and the setting and the costumes and absolutely everything, the music, everything's just perfection. I absolutely love his movies. Same with Robert Eggers. He made The Witch, which was, to me at least, rather scary. That was a very scary movie, in my opinion. However, he also made The Lighthouse, which to me wasn't scary, but was very atmospheric. It's a black and white movie with Robert Pattinson, who is absolutely bloody amazing in that movie, and highly recommend it. Some people say it's a horror, some people say it's not a horror, but it has some more depth if that's what you're looking into, and it's an incredible movie. Highly, highly recommend it. But also, I don't remember the director's name, but there are also movies from this new wave kind of horror coming out. He made Us and Get Out. And now, I haven't watched those 2 movies. I did hear they're absolutely amazing and really, really well made, and they have beautiful meaning and everything, so I'm just putting it out there in case anyone was interested. So the next movie is, you know, you're gonna have movies about ghosts, and some of them are gonna be scary, some of them are gonna be less scary. One of the first ghost-related movies I watched was The Ring. It was the American version, although the Japanese one is better, but the American one, in my opinion, is less scary. I would say that The Ring to me wasn't scary at all, but then again, that's just my opinion. It can be scary to you. However, I still highly recommend The Ring. I still think it's an extremely good movie. I really, both versions, although the Japanese is better, I really like the concept. It's very original, and that's what I like in horror, because oftentimes in horror you get the same thing over and over and over again, just remade 100 times. Meanwhile, The Ring is a very new, very original concept, which I really enjoyed. But also a horror movie about ghosts, which is, in my opinion, really not that scary, especially if you're starting out, but it's still a very good movie, is the movie The Others with Nicole Kidman. Absolutely stunning, beautiful plot twist, also very well made, a little bit spooky, but just a little bit. It's not gonna scare the living shit out of you. But yeah, if you're more into ghosts, I can definitely recommend that. There's also a part of horror that is a little bit more comedy or parody-ish, that's supposed to kind of parody horror more than be actual horror. I would say probably definitely like the Child's Play, so Chucky doll series, although that is still counts as a slasher, I think. But apart from that, one movie that I watched that I think isn't that scary, but is also one of the best movies I've ever watched, even though a lot of people disagree, that is The Cabin in the Woods, because it takes all the horror tropes that are out there and puts them into one, and it's absolutely bloody amazing. They put so much effort into that movie, and it's really well made, and I love how they play with the tropes, and they take the tropes that you know and love so well, and they change them up, and they still manage to surprise you. Really, really great. Highly recommend. Plus, I don't think it's that scary either, so I think you can definitely watch that. A lot of different movies that I would love to recommend to you guys as well, from like different genres and everything, but I don't want this video to be too long. I'm pretty sure it's long as it is. So if this movie does well and if you enjoy it, I will try to talk more about horror movies, and I will try to, I don't know, give some more tips, or, you know, recommend some more movies for people who are just starting out that, you know, won't traumatize you, for instance. I don't know. Because there's a lot of really good movies out there, because it's like I said, like you can take horror and turn it to something cheap, and that's been redone so many times, but there are just some tropes that are just amazing. Oh, I would love to do a video, if this movie does well, I would love to do, this video, I said movie, this video, I would love to do one where I rate horror tropes, my favorite horror tropes. Spoiler alert, my favorite one is the final girl. Obviously, if you're into horror, you know what I mean. It just has a special spot in my heart. So yeah, so that's all for me today. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what horror movies you like the most if you watch horror movies. Let me know if you're just starting out and you watch any of the movies. I like what your thoughts on the topic are. I love to hear your guys' opinions, and I love to interact with you guys, so just let me know what you think in general. I'd love to hear that. So stay happy, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.